Can't Take That Away From Me by George Gershwin. Got the chart out of the real book. Got to say, I've played this with a lot of musicians, different bands and things, and I can't ever remember playing it like it is here in the real book. So I'm going to show you some of the most common reharmonizations. So in case you're playing, so I'm going to show you some of the most common reharmonizations. And I think I'll do 2 or 3 videos about this song, and I'm going to start off really, really basic and just kind of follow the chart for the most part and do all the chords in root position with my left hand and try to play the melody where it's written. So we've got B flat 7th, sus 4. Okay, now that's just a 7th chord, dominant 7th, with the 3rd raised. But there's a lot of easy ways to get this chord. You know, I always think B flat 11th. And I do it this way, B flat, and then play an A flat major triad. See, down a whole step from B flat, A flat. It gives you a nice voicing for that first chord. All right, then we're on to E flat. The chart just says E flat, but of course, in these older jazz songs, they're pretty much based on 4-note harmony, so you've got to add either the 6th or the major 7th. And here I think I'm going to add the 6th. In the second measure, I've got 2 little slashes indicating that E flat goes for another 2 beats and then the G flat diminished. On almost every recording I listened to, something was going on in this first measure. They either went from the E flat down to a B flat dominant and back to E flat, and then the G flat diminished, or it was like an E flat and then walking up to the F minor and then to the G minor, and then the G flat diminished. So that's the most common way of reharmonizing that. And there's the G flat diminished, and I'm just playing 3 notes here. Here I've got G flat diminished. All right, and that's just minor thirds. And the melody note gives us that 4th note of the diminished chord. And then you may be wondering, well, how do I play F minor? You know, what do I do? Well, you could play it right there, like that. Or you could take the melody up an octave at that point. All right, then B flat, sus again. There it is in its simplest form. And here's B flat minor 7th. Could have stayed down there, I suppose. And then E flat 7th. A flat, and I'll make it a major 7th this time. Here's C 7th. I did invert the chord. And a more common way of doing it is going down to G minor there. But the C7 really is better sounding. And I really like that voicing for this B flat sus chord. And, you know, I've got the root, the 7th, the 9th, and of course the 3rd is the one that's been moved up to the 4th. That's why they call it a sus 4th. Sus 4th, because you can kind of resolve it back down there, you see. It's suspended up in the air and then it falls back down. So. And you can just play right around yourself like that. And there in the second ending, I think most often it's a B flat instead of a D flat. But once again, I think the chart is stronger here. Kind of cool. And then going to the G minor, there's almost always some kind of a 2-5-1 like that, or just the 5 chord. You say, well, wait a minute, that's not the 5 chord. The song is moving into the key of G minor here, so we have to start thinking in G minor, and that's the 5 chord D. And by a 5 chord, I mean a dominant 7th chord. Now, that's what the chart says, but I listened to several recordings, including the original, the Frank Sinatra version, the Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong version, and nobody did it that way. They all go G minor, like D 7th, G minor, D 7th, or there's 2 5-1s in there. And then also here, G minor, where it goes to A plus 7. I like the chart. It sounds good there. I didn't hear anybody do it that way. So maybe just staying on G minor. Sometimes there's an E flat in there, I think, like that, then A minor. Now, I will say, though, that the C7 is kind of bluesy, and I can kind of hear that in George Gershwin songs, you know. He does that chord progression a lot, so, you know, it may be authentic, and you might talk it over with your band members and see if that might be how you want to do it. And then C7th for sure here. The chart's got the G flat minor 7 flat 5 and then the C7th. That's a little reharmonization. I think it's stronger actually in the simple way where you go G minor to C and then F7th. And of course that could be reharmonized too. You could go C minor F7th. Then we're back to our 11th chord. Another common reharmonization here is to go E flat, A flat 7th, then G minor, and then the G flat. And that's called the move. I don't think a whole lot of people refer to it that way, but it has been called that before, the move. When you're trying to get to the 2 chord, you go 1, 4, 3, flat 3, 2, generally, or 1, 4, 3, 6, 2. So let's do the move here. Now, once again, the chart is different than the way most people, I believe, play it. They kind of go back to E flat there, and then often to A flat minor 6th, which of course really is D flat 7th. Just depends on what the bass note is. So the chart is very similar to the way most people play it, but I love this root movement of A flat to B flat to C and up to D flat. And then we've got our little 1, 3, 6, 5 here, and the diminished chord here, that's functioning as a C7th, so that's why I called it like a 6 chord. So another really important reharmonization. I say it's important because the Frank Sinatra version does this, and just every time they get to this chord progression, they do it. So down there on the second line, after you've played B flat minor 7th, E 7th to E flat 7th. It's just always there. It's a good one to do. Now, maybe another step that you could take is to invert some of the chords. So if I was to do that, could go to the B flat 7th there, and then, you know, I can just hit that once because then right away it goes back to that suspended. So there I inverted B flat 7th. So I could get to E flat 7th. There I inverted the C. And here I'll just do that voicing again. The move. I'm using open voicings there. There was a rootless voicing of D flat. that way. Otherwise, put it in root position. It'll sound better that way. Unless you know those rootless voicings, which are useful. Then, so if you're doing a 2-5-1, you can almost always invert them like this. Start root position on A minor 7 flat 5. Then just move the top 2 notes down. You get D 7th. Then go to G minor. And I'm just going to use the D 7th mostly, or I'll use a 2-5-1. Now, if you just change that F 7th to F minor, that really is the suspended chord without the root. So that's an easy way to do it. Go F 7th, and then just change it to F minor. Maybe throw that root in at some point. The move again. Now, I call that one the Dalbir Oni Move because the bass player I've been working with does it that way. He plays 2 beats on E flat, really E flat. Usually the bass goes down to B flat there. And then A, which is kind of a half diminished chord, A flat 7th, and G minor. And of course, you could use some different chords there too. You could go, instead of a half diminished, I suppose you could go, well, that wouldn't be very good. You could be altered, and then maybe a diminished. No, I think the minor 7 flat 5 works the best, and I'll tell you why. The minor 7 is a substitute chord for E flat major. So you may say, well, that doesn't seem like a good substitute, but take E flat major 7th. One of the substitutes for that is G minor 7th. You can see it's very similar. But also A minor 7th. You go tritone away, right? Tritone away and play a minor 7 flat 5 chord. And like you can hear that in Over the Rainbow, you know. Instead of going to E flat, I went to A minor 7 flat 5. So that works as the Dalbir Oni Move. Right, and then follow that up with either a diminished chord or a 7th chord, and then G minor again. And I'm going to do a little advanced segment here. Maybe might make it another video or just put it at the end. But this diminished chord here is really functioning different than most diminished chords function. Most diminished chords function as dominant 7ths. Like, for instance, if you're in C major and you go up to C sharp diminished, that's really functioning as A 7th, because what's next? D minor, right? C diminished. Even this one going up goes to E minor, so it's kind of like a B chord, B to E, cycle of fifths. However, when you're going down like that, you know, it's not functioning in the exact same way, because, you know, dominant motion would take you right back to there. So it's going down here, and it does not work at all going down to the root, but it certainly works between the 3 chord and the 2 chord if you're going down to use the diminished chord. And I'm going to do a little exploration of that chord progression in this song. So, okay, well, let's examine that diminished chord there in the second beat. Using a very simple reharmonization of E flat, F minor to G minor, and then G flat diminished to F. We have the 3 chord moving down through a diminished chord to the F minor 7th. Okay, and that diminished chord's not functioning as a 5 chord or as a dominant chord, because the dominant chord going to F would be this dominant, right? Not this dominant. Right. So we can treat it just the same as we treat any other diminished chord. We can add whole tone extensions to it, any chord tone moved up by, or you can add the extension or just change it, right? But any chord tone, you can move up a whole step. So I could add a D to this. that works nicely. Or an F, right, because that's a whole step up from E flat. Or a B. Or a A flat. Right, because those are all whole tone extensions. Now, what other things do we know about diminished harmony? We know that if you add all those whole tone extensions, you end up with the diminished scale, right? Because you have a whole step, a half step gives you another chord tone, a whole step, which is a whole tone extension, then the half step, whole tone extension, half step, whole tone extension, half step to another chord tone. There's our chord tones. If we examine that scale, we'll find that there are triads contained within that scale. All right, it sounds like a big mess there, but look, D is in there, F is in there, A flat is in there. There's A flat, and B is in there. So there's 4 triads, and they're a minor third apart, and they're all contained in that scale. So I might exploit that a little bit when I'm improvising. I'm on G minor. And by the way, on this G minor chord, I'm probably not going to do Dorian mode or thinking really in G minor. I'm still going to think in E flat. So that's really Phrygian mode, but just think E flat major scale. And then here on the G flat, I'm going to use one of those triads. Let me try a D triad. Right? And then as I get to F minor, I'm going to kind of blues it up a little bit. I'm going to use a little bit of blues scale. This is one of the harder blues scales too, E flat. And you can see why. There's only one white key in it, so you got to be careful about where you put your fingers. G minor chord. We're going to come down. So I use a little blues in there, but I use that D triad. All right, now that's an easy triad to remember too, because if you're in E flat, just think a half step down from E flat, and you're going to get that D. And right there, that's a blue note. So that's the one note in the blues scale there. That's a white key, so I can use that, right? All right, let me try another triad. One I like to use is the B triad. That's a good one. That's a good one. Honestly, this is just something I worked out the other day. So don't expect me to just burn off any really great licks here. But I might get a few in. Yeah, that was a pretty good one there. I'm going to try something going up, and let's see. I'll use the F. Now, I'm still sticking in E flat, so I'm going to go to a F triad there. All right, that worked pretty good. All right, and now see, what's the other triad? A flat. That's like the 4th of E flat, so I can go. That didn't really yield anything too great. Let's see if we can get something better. And of course, you can use more than one of those triads. You can maybe go like... Well, enjoy this song. I do thank everyone for subscribing, and I especially like when you hit the like button. And yeah, be sure to leave some comments. I always take time to read them, and if I have time, I'll respond to them, especially if you have a question about something. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. Comping. It's kind of like the F triad, but so all those are going to work too. This one, that one, and that one. There's a D triad, but that's like a minor triad there, right? B minor triad. So B minor triad, D minor triad. Oh yeah, all those minor triads are going to work too. Yeah, I kind of like the major ones better, but oh, that B minor is funky. So anyway, it's just a cool little harmonic progression that you find in so many songs. I think you can find that in the last A section of All the Things You Are, and just about anything that you're doing the move on. You could probably use that. Like, you know, sometimes people use the move in the song "The Girl from Ipanema." They go. See right there, you could use a diminished chord. So, all right. So I was just thinking the key of F, and because I'm key of F, and I go down a half step to the triad, or go up a whole step and do the triad. Oh, F. Yeah. So, or I could use that funky one, D flat. Let's see what that happens there. Yeah, it gives a real sophisticated harmony there. And, you know, so E minor triad would be a cool one too. Another thing you could do in the bridge, kind of work your way down like that, the old Stairway to Heaven type chord progression, because, you know, that's a D7th really, kind of. There's G minor, and then you get the C7th, and then you could maybe do E flat major 7th, change it to the dominant, and then hit D7th or A to D7th. I used the substitute for E flat, which is A minor 7 flat 5. You know, you can start going nuts with reharmonization and destroy the song altogether.